How y'all doing? Hope everybody good. I wanted to drop in and give y'all a quick video. Today's video, I'm gonna talk about an emergency fund. What an emergency fund is, why it's important, and how much you should have in one. And this sort of kind of a refresher video. One of the first ones I recorded was talking about the same thing. So this for my people that's probably just getting acclimated with the channel, for somebody that might not know what an emergency fund is. So basically, getting straight into it, an emergency fund is money you have set aside for unexpected expenses. So this is not money that you use for shopping and vacation, things of that nature. This is for your emergency. So when your car breaks down and you want to spend, or you, Lord forbid, you lose your job or your child's sick, stuff that you didn't expect to happen. And this is really important for our financial journey. It helps secure our foundation and base. Remember we talked about building a house. You always start from the base and you build up from there. You don't want to start from the top and then you don't want to start building from the top. It's going to collapse. So when we talk about building wealth, it's hard to do without an emergency fund. When we talk about a person investing their money and they do it without any emergency savings, when an emergency does happen, guess what they got to do? Take that money right out of them investments. That's what we're not trying to do. Or if you don't have any emergency savings and you have it where your car does break down, you having to use credit card debt, or you having to ask family members and friends. That's what So we're trying to get out of that. We're trying to get out of the survival mode and trying to get to where we can build. And when we have an emergency fund, it gives us a peace of mind. Obviously, it's stressful when our car breaks down, but it's a lot easier when you have the money to pay for it. You ain't really got to worry about it. You lose your job, that's even more stressful, but it's a little bit easier when you have some expenses saved to where, okay, you got a little bit of time to where you can look for another job and you're not going into the hole with your bills. So that's why it's important for us to, emphasize having an emergency fund. How much should you have in an emergency fund? Typically, you want to have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved, depending on your situation. So if you got a stable job, or say you might be a younger person, you don't really have that many responsibilities, you can aim for 3 months. If you got like a family, unstable working situation, you probably can aim 6 months. And even once we had a fully funded one, keep going up higher from there. So you have a year's worth of expenses saved. You have 2 years worth of expenses saved. It might take a long time to get there, but eventually you want to get there. And, just doing a mental exercise, how long, think about it from the perspective of how long could you go without a paycheck. So let's say, Lord forbid, you lost your job today. How many months would you be able to survive, based on your situation as far as like bills? So if you have a month's worth of expenses saved compared to a year's worth of expenses saved, that them two people gonna look at the situation a lot more different. The person with a month worth of expenses saved is gonna be a lot more stressed, and we start looking at it from that way because the name of the game is freedom. So the more money we have saved compared to our expenses, the more freedom we have, essentially. So when we talk about having a year's worth or 2 years worth of expenses, that might be way down the line, but that's what we're trying to get there. And even from there, just keep building, because it might be where that gives us more freedom, in the sense of, obviously you don't want to quit your job, but you might want to take a month or two, quit a job, and you tired of the job you at, you want to switch careers, you got, you got a little bit of leeway, or you want to hop into business, like, okay, on the side of your job, or you just don't want to, you got freedom now. So giving you an example, say a person has $2,000 in monthly expenses. In their emergency fund, they would want to have $6,000 and $12,000. Or compared to a person that has $5,000 in monthly expenses, you want to have $15,000 and $30,000. And then thinking about it that's 3 to 6 months. So think about it from a year. The person with $2,000 want to aim for $24,000 to get to a year's worth. The person with $5,000 want to get to $60,000. Like I said, these might be big numbers to some people, but it's okay when you give yourself time. Like it ain't no you have to have tomorrow. This could take years to build, and that's fine. We have to understand time is it's a lot less stressful when you give yourself more time. And that's why I always emphasize, I might sound crazy when I say, hey, keep your expenses as low as humanly possible, but I'm not saying it just in the sense of like just be cheap, but it makes your life easier when you have lower expenses. Obviously, some people don't have that luxury, as far as like, say you might have a big family of things, but say if you're a younger person and you don't have to have high expenses, it makes your life easier. And let's say how to acquire emergency fund. Like let's say for a person that's let's say if you don't have that many savings, or you don't have savings at all, we want to track our income and expenses. So I'm about to make another refresher video in a second of like how to track your income and expenses. What is our current financial situation like? How much are we able to save monthly? Can we save monthly? If not, where is our spending going? So how can we save more? Obviously we can either increase our income or lower our expenses, preferably both. And the main thing is we just gonna have to sacrifice if we're not able to save right now. It don't have to be a forever thing. We were talking about lowering our expenses or lowering our lifestyle or having to work an extra job or having to, it don't have to be forever, but we do want to get it to eventually where we're getting out of survival mode, living check to check. It's a lot easier when you have a little bit of, you're above water a little bit. You're not drowning as much. So when we're talking about, okay, you might have to get a roommate, and that could save you an extra $500 a month, or we might have to work go find another part-time job for some months. But on top of that, being intentional with this extra money that's coming in. A lot of times I see people where they have these excuses of like, well, if I had this, that, I'd be able to do this. And then they get the opportunity, or even when they had the opportunity, they wasn't doing it. So making sure, say if you are working an extra job, or making sure if you are cutting down expenses, the extra money that you're using, you're actually using it towards savings, because that's where we get into the conversation of lifestyle inflation. The more money a person makes, the more money a person spends. A lot of times people say, man, okay, I go out and get an extra job and then they look up and it's like, damn, I still don't have no money. You got to be intentional with your spending. If you just spend blindlessly, the money's going to go wherever it wants to. That's what we don't want to do. So, being intentional when you give yourself extra money. And with the emergency fund, like I said, we're going to have to sacrifice and give ourselves time. It might be where it takes us a year to build up 3 months of expenses saved. That's okay. It might be where it takes 2 years to build up 3 months. That's fine. Like, if you only have $100 to squeeze a month, okay, like say you don't have no money saved right now. And like I said, 3 months to 6 months might sound crazy. Okay, start with, can we get to 500? That might, if you only have $100 to squeeze, or let's say you have $200 to squeeze, that's going to take you 2.5 months, but you got 500. And that's amazing, because now when the car breaks down, hopefully it's below 500, you can pay for it. We ain't got to go into credit card debt. Okay, we at 500, can we get to 1,000? When you break it down, it makes things a lot easier. So we at 1,000, okay, can we get to 1 month of expenses? Then can we get to 2? And then we can keep going from there. So it doesn't have to be this thing where you have to go from 0 to 3 months. You know what I'm saying? Break it down throughout the middle. Get to 500. Let's get to 1,000, 1,500. You know what I'm saying? Build slowly. And when you break it down like that, it makes it a lot easier instead of you thinking you just had to get to this huge number. You're gonna feel sort of kind of defeated if you're just chasing a big number. There's a lot of space in between that you can reach your goals through. And let's say start, but start small. And where should you keep your emergency fund once you do have it? Don't overthink it. Just keep it in somewhere that's really liquid, in the sense you can get access to it really fast. Like, high yield savings account is pretty cool because you can get access to it, and the money's growing a little bit. You don't want this money tied up to where an emergency happens, you can't get to it. What's the point? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what we not want to do. And then lastly, do you want to pay off high interest debt or build an emergency fund? I would say, if you had to use that, I'm not sure the video. Okay, fast. With this, I would say at least start. I would start with a starter emergency fund. So like we were just talking about having a 500, then building to 1,000. I would at least try to get to 1,000 saved, and then if I want to, I'll tackle high interest debt. The reason being, if you don't have any emergency fund savings and you have high interest debt, if you don't have any emergency fund savings and you have high interest debt, it's sort of kind of, and you just trying to pay off all your high interest debt, and an emergency does happen, guess what you're just going to have to do? Go back into even more debt. You know what I'm saying? So I would think, I think it makes sense to build a starter emergency fund first when we're talking about getting the 500 to 1,000. And then when an emergency does happen, okay, you could cover that and then tackle your high interest debt. But Let's see. And then, okay, if you do, like I said, when you do utilize your emergency fund, make sure to build it back up. So if you do have to, let's say you got 3 months of expenses, say, and let's say it's 10,000, you got to take out, let's say you was out of work for a week and had to use what, or you was out of work for a month, you had to use 2,000. Okay, build that 2,000 back up to 10,000 to get your emergency fund back full. You know what I'm saying? Don't neglect it, because it can be something that you can forget about. Or even if you have it where your expenses rise a little bit, make sure it makes sense with the emergency fund. So if your expenses was 2,000 and you had 12,000 saved, now your expenses 3,000 and you want to get to that 6 months. What, 3,000 times 6? Okay, you're gonna have to, try to build to that 6 months. It's not 12,000 no more. That would be 18,000. You get what I'm saying? So make sure once you reach it and you use it, you build it back up. And also, if your expenses rise, make sure you build your emergency fund with those expenses. And make sure we only use it for emergencies. This is where we have to use discipline. This is not vacation money. This is not shopping money. This is for emergencies. And discipline is such an easy word, but it's actually hard to do in theory. So, it's going to be tempting, but don't touch this money, only for emergencies. And yeah, that's what we got today. We talked about an emergency fund, what an emergency fund is, why it's important, and how to build one. Just a little quick refresher video for y'all. If y'all have any questions for me, please reach out to me. And if y'all could, like, comment, subscribe. I truly appreciate y'all. Stay blessed.